Okay, cool. For those of you who don't know me or might not know me, my name is Oshin. I'm the co-founder of C23 Labs with Oscar and Kermo, an online education platform specifically for tattoo artists. And over the past 3 years, I've personally spoken to over 2,000 tattoo studios and tattoo artists about their social media, marketing, sales, and business skills. I've personally spent over $1 million on advertising spend on Meta and Google for tattoo studios. I've either personally taken, listened to, or read thousands of client and artist sales conversations, and in doing all of this have generated over $7 million in revenue for tattoo studios globally. So in today's video, I want to talk a little bit more, rant a little bit more about your client's buying psychology, human psychology and behaviors, and how people actually make decisions when it comes to buying something, which is not what you think. You know what, let's get straight into it. I'm going to start with a quick example of an ideal client. Let's say you have a client or an inquiry or someone who's following you. They have all the money in the world. They love your work. They have been sitting on an idea for years and they love that idea. Why have they not booked the tattoo yet? Right, it's confusing. If they love your work, they have all the money in the world, they know exactly what they want. What's left to do? Just get the tattoo. Easier said than done. The reason that that person hasn't booked the tattoo yet is because they have a deep underlying internal fear in their mind that is holding them back. It's nothing to do with you. And it stems from a psychological concept that actually won a Nobel Prize called loss aversion. So I'm going to explain loss aversion through a quick kind of experiment with you. I'm going to ask you two quick questions. Would you rather win $1,000 guaranteed, so I give you $1,000 right now, guaranteed, or take a 50-50 chance at winning $2,000 or winning nothing? Okay, raise your hand if you would take the $1,000. Now, most of you watching this probably raised your hand. Second question then, would you rather lose $1,000 guaranteed, so I take $1,000 from you guaranteed, or take a 50-50 chance at losing $2,000, so double, or losing nothing? Okay, most of you would take the risk of losing double to lose nothing. Now, statistically, these questions are the same mathematically, right? You either have a 100% chance of winning or double, or losing and double. But what loss aversion explains and what that analogy explains is that we feel the pain of losing something twice as hard as the equivalent joy we get of gaining something. So in plain English, losing $1,000 guaranteed hurts twice as much as the joy that you would get from gaining $1,000. So we avoid losses, okay, more than we seek gains. And how that relates to your client psychology and buying psychology is through the gains and losses that they perceive when buying a tattoo, right? So the gains would be, I'm going to feel more confident. I'm going to have this beautiful tattoo. I'm going to have a great experience with the artist, right? I have all the money. I'm ready. Those are all gains. These are all things that they would gain or desires, reason that they would desire the tattoo. And the losses are the internal fears that they have. What if it scabs? What if I hate it in 5 years? What if my family, coworkers, friends judge me for it, okay? What if the artist doesn't listen to me, etc.? These are all losses. So reasons that they would feel a loss of getting a tattoo, or fears. So the analogy I'm going to use from now on, instead of gains and losses, is fears and desires. And I'm going to show you on the screen here somewhere a scale that kind of explains in visual terms the difference between the fears and the losses. As you can see here, the desires, so the gains, the desires are all these little pebbles. These are all little reasons why they would want the tattoo. Feel more confident, good experience with the artist. They know exactly what they want. They have money saved up. You know, they're going to have a beautiful tattoo on their arm, whatever. And you can see on the left here, this big, massive rock, which is the big fear, right? What if I hate it? What if my family, friends, coworkers judge me for it? I can't handle the physical pain. What if my artist doesn't listen, right? What if it scabs? All of these things. And as you can see, as mentioned, the fear weighs twice as much as the desire. That's why it's a big rock and little pebbles. And what most artists try to do in their content and their marketing is create more little pebbles to tip the scale, right? Look at this flash I did. Look at this giveaway. Look at this discount, etc., right? But what happens is you're just adding tiny little pebbles and the scale's not moving. Whereas if you just simply removed the big rock, the fear, the scale would naturally tip because there's nothing left but desire, okay? There's nothing left for them but for them to be excited. And a lot of you might feel when this happens that they're way more excited than they were. That's not the case. There's just no fear. So all that's left is for them to be excited. So what you want to do in your marketing and in your sales is to figure out what that pain point is, what that hesitation, what that fear is. What are they scared of? Why have they been sitting on that tattoo for years, right? And if you remove that, you help them overcome that fear, they will naturally buy, because all that's left is for them to be excited. By the way, if you're enjoying my content and you feel like you're learning something and you want to kind of get more personalized help with your marketing, your social media, psychology, client sales conversations, there's a link in the description, the first link below. You can actually apply to work with me one-on-one. So you'll get access to 40 plus hours of content on all of the stuff I talk about in detail. You'll have direct access to me in the DMs for any time. You can send me your content, sales conversations. And I do live calls every week where you can jump on, ask questions, and be part of a community that's, trying to figure out the same thing, which is the marketing side. So yeah, if that's interesting to you, you want to work with me a little bit more personally and get some more personalized help on your social media marketing and sales skills, you can click the first link in the description below and you can apply, and we'll talk soon. So remember, in marketing and sales, your client already wants a tattoo from you. They wouldn't be following you, engaging with your work, reaching out if they didn't. So your job in sales and marketing is to remove mental barriers rather than constantly creating more desire. And I want to use that analogy again of the hypothetical scenario of that client. Let's say that client eventually does book after 1 year of more thinking. What actually happened in that year of thinking? Did they need a year to think about it? No, what happened is they had this fear in their mind that they were sitting on for years, and then after another year, on month 12, they eventually heard something or saw something or spoke to someone that helped them overcome that fear or shift their perception or perspective around that fear or hesitation or question that they had, and then they booked, okay? What I'm getting at is your clients don't need time to make a decision, a buying decision. They need information. And some clients take longer to come across that information. So what we're trying to do in our marketing and in our sales is to figure out, first of all, what they need to hear from asking our clients, but then secondly, talking about that in our marketing. So that year of thinking goes to a week, to a day. Because remember, they don't need time to think about it. They just are missing a certain part of information. And some people, it takes longer for them to hear that or see that or shift that perspective than others. That's why some clients book straight away and some clients sit on it for years. And the reason is because there are 6 core beliefs that people need to kind of check off in their mind in order to be confident in buying. Those are doubt, desire, trust, money, support, and fear. And you can't have 4 or 5 of them checked off. They all need to be checked off. And the reason for that is because we are, as humans, we're very scared of making the wrong decision, okay? It stems from what's called identity threat. Because what identity threat basically explains is that people don't want to make a bad decision, because if they admit that they were wrong, it will damage our self-image and our self-worth, right? If we make a decision and then we admit it was wrong, we're basically admitting that it's a reflection of poor judgment from us, which hurts our identity and our ego. So most people would rather make no decision than make a decision, because you're avoiding being wrong. That's why a lot of people don't chase their dreams, right? Because they would rather not chase their dreams and not be wrong or fail than chase their dreams, okay? And it stems back to these core beliefs. The reason they all need to be checked off is because if they're all checked off, there's basically no excuses left in their mind to not buy. So they will feel that they're rationally making a really good judgment on this tattoo if they're all checked off. And one of them not being checked off is enough to hold them back. Remember, fears outweigh desires. So let's go through these core beliefs one by one and let me explain a little bit more in detail about what they actually mean. So the first one is doubt. They need to feel that they can't solve it alone. And for you, that's fine. That's already checked off because they're not a tattoo artist. Of course, they can't solve it alone. They can't tattoo. The next is desire. They need to genuinely want the tattoo. This is also checked off for you, okay? Because your followers are following you because they like your work. They're reaching out, they're engaging. So this is already checked off. Contrary to popular belief, this one's already checked off. But most artists are focusing on this for their whole marketing strategy. The next then is money. They need to have the resources, but most importantly, they need to feel like they're making a sound financial decision. And then support, trust, and fear, these are kind of all interconnected. They're all reasons that could be the big rock, hesitation and fear, etc. For example, support. Do they have support from their friends, family, coworkers, right? So external judgment. Trust. Do they trust the artist? Not just your work, but do they trust you'll listen to them? Do they trust that you will get on really well? Do you trust that you'll have the artistic vision that they're looking for, right? Do you trust that they won't judge you, etc.? And then fear, which is obviously all of the irrational, internal, kind of unique hesitations. I'm scared of pain. I'm not sure if I'll like it in 5 years. What if it scabs? Because they've heard, horror stories, etc. So support, trust, and fear are all core beliefs that could be that big rock, as we mentioned earlier in this video. So I want to talk a little bit more in depth about money, because I hear this all the time. My clients are cheap. My clients don't understand price versus value. why are all of my DMs asking about the price first, right, and not asking about my art? Let me explain psychologically why. Firstly, when it comes to budget and pricing, okay, your clients, they just have an irrational perception on budget. They don't actually want the cheapest tattoo, because if they did want the cheapest tattoo, they would have gone to the cheapest artist already, okay? They would go get a sleeve and hepatitis for 50 bucks in the mom's basement, right? But they haven't done that. So it's not that they want the cheapest, they want to get the best tattoo they can possibly get with the perceived budget that they have in their mind. And I want to touch on budget as well, because most clients, their budget is a number that they've pulled out of their ass, right? It's either a number that they have in their pocket right then and there, or most importantly, it's usually a number that they're comfortable in spending. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a client who has $2,000, right, in their account, but they tell you their budget is $500. Why do they do that? The reason is not because their budget is $500, because we know that they have $2,000 to spend if they really wanted to, but because $500 in their mind is a number that they would be comfortably willing to spend, right? The key word here is comfortable. They would be willing to see that $500 go without it feeling uncomfortable. Now, if they were to spend $1,500 of that $2,000, now that's scary, right? That's uncomfortable, because that's 75% of their actual money, okay? So what you have to understand is that most people's budget can be higher than it is. They just don't want to choose a number that is uncomfortable in spending, and they stick to that comfort zone. And what your sales and your marketing can do is create that gap in their mind between price and value, make them realize that the experience that they have with you is so much more than just a finished piece, which allows them to trust you more, which then allows them to start getting a bit more uncomfortable in their mind about how much they're willing to spend. For example, going back to a previous video that I recorded, you should check it out if you haven't, talking about giving your client or your inquiry advice that might not help you in the short term. For example, you should go to another artist, or you should wait, etc. In this scenario, an example of a conversation that could be had is like, hey, you mentioned that you really want this in your tattoos, you want to emulate XYZ. You say you have this budget now, but as you mentioned, this is just a number that you have in your pocket at the moment. I would highly recommend that you save up for a couple of months and go to an artist that is more expensive, but go to the artist that you really want to go to. Whether it's me or not, doesn't matter. I really want to make sure that you make a good decision, because this is on you for life, and you don't want to just get a tattoo now to gratify yourself rather than waiting and being proud of it, okay? And that is what they need to hear. And you can use your sales conversations and your marketing to say that inadvertently, right? And that alone will shift their perception about budget, timing, patience. And also, if you're the one who shifts that perspective, they trust you, and then they're willing to uncomfortably spend more with you. I also hear a lot from artists too at the moment, and I've seen it. Why are 80% of my DMs asking about the price? And no, they're not trying to be annoying, and I'll explain why. There's three main reasons that people start with asking about the price, right? All of them stem into this basic irrational belief. They don't understand the difference between price and value just yet, okay? The first reason that people ask about the price first is because money connected the whole world. I'll explain what I mean. Back in the day, thousands of years ago, people used to trade, right? So if I had chickens and I wanted your cow, I could say, hey, I could give you 10 chickens for that cow, right? That's how we would exchange things. But what happened was, eventually, if I'm offering you 10 chickens for your cow, but you don't want any chickens, we can't trade because you don't want my chickens. So people started not trading anymore, and it didn't work. So what happened was, money was created as that intermediary, right? The thing in the middle. And basically everyone agreed that money has value, and that allowed people to trade again, because I could say, hey, I'll give you this money for that cow, and then you can use that money to buy what you want, because you don't want my chickens. I can use that money, or the person can use that money to buy what they want, okay? So money became a thing, and it connected the whole trading world again, because people basically universally agreed that it has a form of value. What I'm getting at is, when people don't know anything about something, for example, tattooing, they don't know about the design process, they don't know about the experience, they don't know about all these different things, they turn to the only common feature that they know is deemed valuable, which is money, okay? Because that's all they know. They don't have enough information. For example, when you have a plumber or an electrician come to your house, what are the first two questions you have in your mind? How long is it going to take, and how much is it going to cost, okay? It's natural, it's in our nature. So that is the first main reason people ask about the price first, is because they don't know enough about tattooing to ask anything else. And they're relating how much your tattoos are worth based on money, because they know that money has value and they can compare it to other things in their life that cost the same amount, okay? So your marketing and your sales, we need to shift their perspective and make them realize how much more valuable everything about you is, okay? Which we'll get into. The second reason is because they've had an expectation set in their mind from previous experiences. For example, they've gone to an artist before and they've been a certain price. They still don't know much about tattooing, so when they go to you, they're anchoring your price of the previous artist, okay? It's called the anchoring bias. The first piece of information we get on a topic dictates how we perceive everything else. For example, if you reach out to an artist for a tattoo and they say it's going to be $500, and then they reach out to you then, and you say it's going to be $1,000, they're going to perceive you as expensive because the first guy said 500. Now, if they reach out to an artist, the first artist, and that first artist, instead of saying 500, said $2,000, then they reached out to you and you said $1,000, now in their mind, you're perceived as less expensive, right? As cheap, because they've anchored their kind of judgment on what's expensive or what, if you're expensive or cheap, based on what the first artist said, okay? So that's the main reason. Previous experiences. The other previous experience is that they've reached out to loads of artists about the price, and all of these artists have replied with a price, okay? What happens then is that reinforces their behavior to ask for a price. For example, if a child puts their hand on a fire and gets burned, that reinforces their behavior not to put their hand on the fire again. So when a client doesn't know what to do, ask about the price, and then gets loads of prices back, that reinforces that that's the right thing to do. Oh, when I ask for a price, I get a price back. So that's why they're asking you for a price. Okay? So that's the other reason. What happens then is if you also reply back straight away with the price, you become a commodity. Okay? So that's why we want to guide our sales conversation away from the price in a strategic way to show that you have more value, which you'll see in the next video. And then the third reason is that your content, your brand, doesn't have enough authority or perceived value. So they're looking at your content, they don't see you as an authority, they don't see you as an expert, they don't see you as a professional based on whatever kind of content you're making or the organization. For example, we all see some artist where you go on their page and you can tell they're expensive, you can tell that they're a unique experience. So you're already kind of preparing in your mind, if you're a client, that they're going to cost a lot of money. So that is the third reason. You're not building up enough of an authority or an expertise in your content for people to feel a bit anxious about asking you for the price, right? Because they don't see you as the expert yet. So yeah, basically in a nutshell, in this video, I wanted to explain why your clients might check every box and you might check every box, but they don't buy. The psychology, the real psychology behind how people buy, which is fears and hesitations and loss aversion. Also why people think so much about money, or why people ask about money, or why people can feel like they're being cheap, which is just a misconception of budget and value. And yeah, how people make irrational judgments all the time, which they think are logical, and how you can use that in your marketing and in your sales conversations to stand out above every other artist. Once again, if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. And if you want to be more personally mentored and work more one-on-one with me on your social media marketing, sales and business skills as a tattoo artist, the first link in the description, you can apply to work with me one-on-one. You'll get access to hours of content. You'll have DM access to me every day. We'll also have weekly group calls in the community. And of course as well, if you want to work with me personally one-on-one every single week, you can do that too. Just apply below, tell me what your problems are. We'll jump on a call, see if I can help. And if we can, we'll get started. But yeah, on that note, next video will be about how to use all of this knowledge that you've taken, how to guide that sales conversation to away from price and to value.